Hello, world. Welcome to Office Hours, a podcast where we are going to be yapping about the creative world and everything in between it. Today, we're going to be learning from Vina, who is going to give us a little bit of a behind the scenes of what happens after you submit your job application. Right now, the job market is absolutely bonkers, and it feels like you are submitting your resume into the abyss, and sometimes you get ghosted, or sometimes you get a response, but it feels super cold like a robot. So I invited Vina to the show so that I can better understand and learn from her what are the things that are happening on her side of things. What are some of the barriers that she comes across that ends up coming down to us as candidates that we don't see or hear about. We dive into the very nitty gritty of the things that are happening internally, which can cause some delay. And we also covered what are some best practices on what to put on your resume, what time to submit your resume, and learning the intricacies of the talent acquisition world and really just like the HR world. I love Vina so much, and she is someone who is extremely knowledgeable about this space. And so I'm excited to have her on the show. Let's do it. All right, y'all. I am so excited for this episode. I am so grateful to introduce our guest, Vina Ng. I met Vina over a decade ago when we worked in HR. Yes, I had a stunt in HR for a quick second as a graphic designer. More on that later. And over the years, I have watched Vina grow into an incredibly thoughtful, not that she wasn't, she already was obviously, but a more incredibly thoughtful, grounded, and kind human, and someone who just brings so much love and soul and care into the work that she does. Something Vina and I have always had in common, is that we are women of context and preparedness and are very, very frequent overthinkers. And that's what I love about her, about us. Vina is a director of talent acquisition based here in LA. And when she's not reviewing resumes and thousands of applications, she is spending her time with the people that she loves, including her adorable boyfriend, Irvin, and their fur babies. And I could not leave this out, but also brown belt and Krav Maga. Yeah, right? Brown belt recently? Yeah, okay. Brown belt. So she actually can kick ass, like actually. Alvina, sorry. Vina. Vina, thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh my God, what a generous intro. It was so hard. I was like, I'm not gonna say anything. I want to just like wait for my turn, but then just the little reactions that I had, I was like,
Yes.
oh God, I'm so
No,
sorry.
you're so fine. I know. It's you're so fine. I'm so just so that the viewers and listeners know, it's like full circle because I was on your podcast
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Twice.
Twice, yes. And you inspired
Yeah.
me to finally, because I've had this idea about the podcast for like 3 years. So I was like, I'm gonna just do it. I'm gonna
Yeah.
just do it.
Yes, I love it. I when I saw the announcement, I was like, "Oh my gosh, she's really doing it. I'm so proud
Thank
of
you.
her." Like I love it when people, go and seek and do what they've been wanting to do for some time. And, you just know that in the back end there's some like trepidation,
Ah,
there's a little bit of like anxiety and fear, but the fact that someone's actually like putting their stuff out there, it really is, it takes a lot of courage.
it's
So, yeah, I'm so
hard. No,
proud of
I'm so proud of you.
you.
Ugly crying. The entire episode is just like ugly crying the whole
I
time.
know. The entire time. Yeah.
So, Vina, I brought you on the show today to learn more about the other side of the job market that we often don't get to really
Yeah.
see or hear about. Um, I
Hmm.
just had the last episode that I recorded was with Ricardo Garcia, and we spoke at length about how job hunting has been really discouraging. Not that it never has been, but really at the time that we are right now with the job market, it's been pretty hard, but I always wanted to
Yeah.
hold space for what it might feel like on the other side of things because I imagine
Mm.
that I'm sure that there's a lot of things that that we don't know what's happening, and I wanted to bring you on the show to like sort of demystify or clarify a few things. Um, but
Yeah.
before we actually get into that, let's talk a little bit. I'd love to hear a little bit. I already know, of course, but of course, I would like our viewers to know is
Yeah.
how did you get into your journey of talent acquisition and like how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the context. um, we love it. And, like you said in the intro, it's definitely been full circle moment, us two seeing each other on a podcast, but even, with our whole journey of our friendship, right? I've been in the workforce since 2012, so we're coming up on like what 14 years of work experience. I started out as an HR manager at a call it an 11-person startup managing everything from finance, which I had absolutely no business managing. Never took a single finance or accounting class in college, but startup life, right? All the way to offboarding. So, basically anything and everything administrative, even IT, onboarding, HR, finance was basically offloaded to me to include Costco runs weekly. So hashtag startup
Mm-hmm.
life, right? And I really grew my talent acquisition chops at a company we both worked at, which is why it's so full circle because that's where we initially met at Textile Fashion Group. And I joined it, I think, in 2015, if I'm getting my history correct. You had already been there,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you were on a separate team at first,
Yeah.
and then we found our way to each other at the on the same team. So that was really kismet and super special. I really do credit to this day my manager, my first manager there, Sarah Pearson. She really, I know, I think she is the best boss and manager I've ever had in my career. And like you have people like that in your life. I see you shouting people out left and right all the time, who you hold near and dear to your heart, Chris. And I think that like Sarah is one of them for me. Sarah did what talent acquisition professionals do best, which is they see, your background, even if you're applying to a different role completely, and they start the conversation with you to talk about the role that you applied for, but then they kind of incept the
Mm-hmm.
idea of like, hey, have you considered
Mm-hmm.
this role?
Mm-hmm.
So, Sarah found me at a time when I was ready to actually quit HR
Oh, I
because,
didn't know that.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah. Prior to that, at the startup, before I was, reporting directly into the CEO, and this is, not his fault whatsoever. A CEO doesn't have
Yeah.
time to, show entry level manager or HR person the
Mm-hmm.
ropes,
Mm-hmm.
right, of not only HR, but especially working life, how it is to transition from being a student to a working
Mm-hmm.
professional. And I was highly impressionable and eager to learn, but obviously, he had no time for me, which is totally makes
Yeah.
sense. So I, felt like, okay, like maybe HR isn't for me and decided to apply to a project manager role at
Mm.
Textile. Yeah, shout out to our other friend and previous coworker, Christy. She used to work, yeah,
I was just talking to
she
Christy.
used
Yeah,
to work on the,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
She used to work on the, I think it was the marketing
Mm-hmm.
team at on the Just Fab side, and she referred me in for this project manager role. And Sarah, looking at my resume, saw that I had HR experience, and she ended up, talking to me about the help that she needed on the team. And she was able to connect the dots between project management, which was something that I was like super eager to learn more about and grow in,
Mm-hmm.
and talent acquisition. She was like, in this coordinator role, you're basically a project manager for these open roles we call requisitions. So you need to shepherd, each workflow step, make sure everything's working well. And, I think I could really take you under my wing. And
Oh.
so, there I stayed for, several years. And it was such a great time learning from Sarah the true, best practices, process, candidate experience being, top of mind. So I really, really learned such great things from Sarah. Then got poached to move on to an ad tech company called Nativo, and joined the company thinking that I was going to report into a director. But the director left before I
Oh
started.
no.
So on my first day, yeah, my first day, I decided to just take on the challenge of, hey, this situation is not what I expected it to be,
Mhm.
but I'm going to, just take the challenge for what it is, and really run with it.
Mhm.
And so I stood up a lot of TA practices, TA standing for talent acquisition, TA practices, processes that had not existed
Mm.
there. Brought in a direct report who, I've really grown to really enjoy working with, and love. His name is Matt Sunaho. Shout out to Matt. And him and I worked really closely side by side to kind of take on the recruiting function there. And then my friends at Steezy came a knockin'. They are a dance education tech platform, teaching folks how to dance online. And these are this company was founded by my friends from the dance community, and one of them in particular I basically grew up with in college. So Evan and Connor, they are both really special to me because they founded something really special. They brought me back in to say, hey, we're ready for a full time director of people. So there I was able to kind of diversify my skill set, not just
Mm.
focused on talent acquisition, but doing everything from creating an employee handbook to creating leveling sheets. The people at Steezy will laugh at me for saying this, but I created competency matrix
Of course you
for
did. Of course you did.
yeah, for the roles at the company, and they were like, say competency matrix one more time, I dare you. Because I was just harping about it all the time, because it's so important
Yes.
to like know where you stand, know how many things you need to accomplish before you're seen as ready for the next level up in your career.
Mhm.
So I wanted to provide that clarity for people. And then also did some manager training and coaching there, which I really, really enjoyed. And then my previous coworker from Nativo, Sarah, also a
Mhm.
Sarah, she reached out to me about a role at this media company called Attention. Um, it was a short stint there because shortly thereafter, that Sarah moved on to where I'm at now,
Mm.
Heartbeat, and she brought me over as well. So the roles after Steezy at Attention and at Heartbeat, where I'm at currently, they're all still focused on talent acquisition, but whenever there is a need for manager training or
Mm.
training of
Mhm.
any kind, learning and development, I love to kind of help out and create, training sessions, workshops where needed. And then also have a little bit of experience from Steezy of, leveling sheets, comp bands, every little thing that, encompasses HR that I had to kind of create from scratch at Steezy, I've had to kind of build upon in my
Mm.
career thereafter. So,
Yeah. So you've
yeah.
just been like everywhere doing everything. So you just have
Mhm.
like the ins and outs of being in the HR world. I did not know that you were planning on leaving HR and like Sarah brought you back. That was so cute. I feel Sarah just had so
Yeah.
like fun fact, Sarah was also my boss when Vina and I were in the same team. And I share that same
Mhm.
celebration of who Sarah is. Like she has this beautiful way of quite literally tapping into your soul and being like, "Is this what you want to do? Because you're really good at it." And you're like, I didn't even know that I'd
Yeah.
be so good at it."
Right, exactly. She is, and she truly sees
Yes.
you. And I think that that's so
Yeah, that was
special.
one of the, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I love, yes, 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 yes. Like she was, that's what really separated her between some of my other managers also, is that she really saw you. Like she didn't
Mhm.
just like, you weren't just someone on
Yeah.
her team. Like she really took care of you. Like I remember one time, like I was
Yes.
having like a full-blown panic attack and she was so busy, and like I came in and I was like, I'm not feeling well. I was like, I think I'm having an anxiety attack for the first time. And she like stopped what she was doing. She turned off all the lights. She turned on some music and she started like waving, I think like an essential oil. And she's like, it's fine.
That is so Sarah. I love that. That is so
Yeah,
good.
I
That
love
is
her
so,
so
so
much.
good.
Um, so wow,
Yeah.
yeah, you have an incredible like journey in the space of HR
Mm,
and like especially in talent acquisition.
thank you.
So
Thank you.
I'm gonna move into like the questions now. The like the
Yeah.
let's get into it. Um,
Let's do it. The meat and
There's,
potatoes.
yes, there's, with, like I mentioned earlier, it's not like the job market hasn't not ever been difficult, but I believe right now, especially
Yeah.
because I'm so close to a lot of emerging designers and a lot of folks, even seniors in my community, have been impacted with lots of layoffs and companies closing and all that stuff. Um,
Yeah.
um, when people say that the hiring process feels, quote unquote, I'm using air quotes for our audio listeners, quote
Mm-hmm.
unquote, feels slow, confusing, or frustrating, like yes, but
Mm-hmm.
as I mentioned, like I want to hold space because I do think that all of that is valid.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is very frustrating, and I feel really really sad for folks, especially my emerging designers, who are constantly feeling
Yeah.
discouraged by the AI responses or the non-responses of getting ghosted and all that stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
is there, not that is there, what are some of the barriers or
Mm-hmm.
constraints on your side that we simply just do not know exist and can't see?
Yeah. Plus one to everything you mentioned about this current job market and just job hunting in
Mm-hmm.
general. And I think you and I hold so much empathy and compassion for folks who are trying to, you know, go through all the avenues that they can to find that one job that will take them. Especially, this is why you do what you do, Chris. Like you have started your whole mission in your professional career is really to pay it
Mm-hmm.
forward, which I really, really love and admire. And I think that that's really using power for good. Is knowing that you've been there, you know what the struggle is like, and you're willing to kind of share the tricks of the trade, and pay it
Mm-hmm.
forward, right? So I really appreciate that you're doing this and highlighting, the craziness that is this process. I've fortunately been able to peek behind the curtain doing what I do, of course. It is unfortunately, I mean, in any regular job market, I can understand that there are like a lot of unknowns to
Mm-hmm.
candidates, but I want to also call out that in this particular job market at this current time, it's so unprecedented. So, all of what I'm about to share is what is happening on any given average
Mm-hmm.
requisition, that could be unknown barriers or constraints to your point. But just know that there's probably like an exponential
Of
on that
course.
because of this
Yes,
crazy time,
yes.
right? So, one of the main barriers that I see working with hiring managers and hiring teams and executives, right, associated with them, is that there isn't a full understanding of what they need.
Mm.
But because there is pressure, whether it's from investors or CEO or senior leadership or C-suite, on delivering something, on being able to perform or get the numbers where they need it to be, whatever numbers it is, whatever KPIs, key performing indicators they are being held to, they have to move so quickly or feel like they have to move so quickly, that they are basically just being reactive,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
right? And this is basically a little bit of a death sentence for hiring, because then you stop aligning properly. Then you stop being intentional
Right.
about like having internal conversations of what you're really looking
Mm-hmm.
for, and you're not aligned with one another on what the open role should be hiring
Mm-hmm.
for. And so it ends up being a lot of hurry up and wait.
Yep. Yeah.
And so, there's a lot of like, oh, we just need, a butt in a seat,
Right.
right? We just need someone, like, more hands on deck, more help that's needed. But when you really ask each and every person on the team, like, they have differing opinions, right?
Mm.
And that kind of segues into another barrier or constraint, is that usually, more often than not, the differentiating sort of differing opinions between what's needed is between the hiring manager themselves and the rest of the team
Mm.
or whoever's on the panel. Usually I'll work with like maybe a VP, an
Mm-hmm.
EVP, or an SVP on hiring for their teams. And, we have people at maybe mid levels or entry level roles
Mm-hmm.
that are doing the job
Mm-hmm.
currently. And the hiring manager may not be fully aware of what the gaps are on the
Mm-hmm.
team. And so, or maybe there's a disagreement in what the team needs to hire for. Maybe the hiring manager is right that, they can see a more bird's eye view of what the team is lacking and where the gaps are on the team. But the people actually doing the work feel
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, what the hiring manager wants to hire for isn't going to solve my day to day
Mm.
problems,
Yeah.
right? So those are the first two things that are usually the most common in terms of barriers and constraints that candidates may not be fully aware of. And then another one that can be a big thing, and I'm mentioning this because of the mass layoffs that are going on right now. Hiring when culture and morale are a mess is really intense because, if you are a survivor of layoffs at your company and you're having to hire for, let's say, because this is so relevant, an AI specialist role, right? You are fully aware that A, you have survived a layoff when your peers and maybe friends that you've made have not made the cut.
Mm.
So you have maybe survivor's guilt
Mm-hmm.
of the layoffs. B, you are thinking that, like, all right, like, is it my time to exit because there's so much, craziness going on at this company? Do I really want to stand for all that's
Mm-hmm.
going on? And maybe there is, differing opinions on the usage of AI too, right? And this is a very hyper specific
Mm-hmm.
example. And then C, having to battle all of that while acting like, hey, you should join our company. There is,
Right.
there's such a, crazy sort of dissonance
Yeah.
there that gets created when you're battling the conscience of
Mm.
bringing someone in versus wanting to subject them to this whiplash
Right.
of working at said
Right.
company, right? So that's another barrier and constraint. And then the last one that I'll mention is that maybe the hiring manager is aligned with their team. Maybe they are fighting the good fight of wanting to hire for this role, but maybe the C-level executives are pulling the rug out from underneath them and all of a sudden
Mm.
saying, hey, this role is now frozen or you lost the headcount. And then, then the hiring manager needs to tell their team, sorry, we're not going to get help after
Right.
all. And then they have to tell talent acquisition to say, sorry, we got to put the role on hold or we got to close the
Right.
role. And all of this internal back and forth, this mess, results in candidates not really hearing back for a while because there's all this inner turmoil going
Yeah.
on, all of that, and then ending up hearing back from the talent acquisition team who has to relay the message to say, sorry, we're actually
Yeah.
not hiring for
Such
this
a
role
bummer because
anymore.
you're just like you're really at this point the messenger of this of what's happening, and
Mm-hmm.
you carry, I know you to be so incredibly empathetic that like delivering this kind of message is not easy to anyone, and it sucks because then
Yeah.
the candidate really only sees you as like the bearer of bad news, when in reality it's like, I've also been in those situations. I've heard about it where like we're gonna bring in, we have X amount of headcount in January, and then all of a sudden it like it decreases like midway, and then like there's layoffs, and it's
Yes.
like the inner workings of it all is so difficult. It really does sound like miscommunication, which obviously I feel like is like the the problem of most things,
Always.
right? It's like
Always.
miscommunication. I'm learning today that like so you're mentioning that the hiring manager is okay, so for folks who are learning about like terminology, so requisition is essentially the
Mm.
role that's opened, right, that you're trying to fill. Okay.
Hmm.
Hiring manager
Yes.
is the person who is in charge of hiring this person, and sometimes is
Hmm.
the person who that applicant would be reporting to, right? For the
Yes,
most, yeah,
sometimes.
sometimes.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
what I'm hearing is that sometimes the ask of the hiring manager doesn't align with what the team actually needs. So, do you
Yes.
take? I know that you're speaking on behalf of yourself as a single entity, as a talent, as a recruiter, but in your practice, do you talk to the team yourself, like to like
Hmm.
individual, like or like most folks on the team to be like, hey, like we're gonna be running this role, like without obviously you're not stepping
Yeah.
on the hiring manager's toes, but like I just want to hear like, do you gather more context?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So, when I realized that this was starting to
Mm-hmm.
happen, textile was really the introduction of like, sometimes this
Mm-hmm.
happens, right? I started to create what's called a pre brief and a debrief part of the process,
Mm.
to embed it into the talent acquisition process. And my old direct report, who I have a lot of fondness for, Matt, who I worked with at Nativo, that's where we kind of like created this pre-brief and debrief. Say that 5 times fast. So the pre-brief, the pre-brief process is in between the kickoff, which is basically the meeting that talent acquisition holds with the hiring manager to really talk through, all right, like all the details of the job spec or the job description, what they're looking for, the must haves, the nice to haves, the budget for the role.
Mm.
This is a more intimate conversation with the hiring
Mm.
manager who is likely the budget owner or knows about the budget
Mm-hmm.
for this role. So that's why not the rest of the hiring team is involved in that
Mm-hmm.
conversation. But at the end of the kickoff conversation, we ask the hiring manager, who would you like to be part of the interview
Mm.
process? From those names, I then create an invitation, and it's a 15-minute conversation with these interview panelists along with the hiring manager. And I make it clear to the hiring manager that, hey, you are leading this 15-minute conversation, but I will be there to
Mm-hmm.
facilitate. And you're going to tell each interviewer why you chose them and what you're hoping for them to focus on, so that there A isn't any overlap or redundancy in the interview process, and B, everyone is aligned
Mm-hmm.
on what they're looking for. And if it is in fact true that there is misalignment, then that conversation will come out and be apparent in that pre-brief
Mm.
meeting. And so that helps save a lot of time down the line, to get people aligned on the front end. And then also, you're not getting interview panelists that are like, oh, I didn't know I was
Yeah.
hiring, like helping to hire for this role. Like a random invite gets added to their
Right.
calendar, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess I am. And that adds more intentionality in the
Yeah.
process. And then, real quick, debriefs are just another 15-minute conversation after the teams have met with like a few
Mm.
candidates, just to whittle down the
Yeah.
candidates.
So, for folks who are listening and they're like, why does it take so long? It's like there are so many meetings happening in the background, right? Or, you know, I I always wonder, like, I'm like, if I was Vina and I was sitting in front of this computer, I'm like, there must be like hundreds and hundreds of applications. And you're reading through
Yeah.
all of these. Um, I'm really curious. I have so many questions, but like I'm really curious. Like after you're done having conversations with the hiring manager and the team, um, we have the same thing in academia too, where we have a committee for
Mm.
hiring our full time teachers. So after you meet with your committee and you start looking, what is the how do I even ask this question? It's like you have all these applicants. Like, how what are there any that like you have a filter that you go, not like a computer filter, but like a mental filter where you're like,
Hmm.
okay, as soon as I see this, it's gonna be I'm gonna pass, or like, ooh, this really stands out. Like, what is that process like for you? Because I can imagine it's very overwhelming. And I want to double up on that question too. Is there's this? I feel like, there's like a lot of conversation in our community right now about how do you get past the ATS? And ATS is a applicant tracking system for those who are learning with us today. How do like, oh, like here's some ways that you can get past it, but maybe we. Not that I'm asking you of like, how do we get past it, but maybe that's like a myth of some sort. Maybe, you know, what's happening on your end.
Yeah, those are really great and thoughtful questions. And it's really interesting because I just had this conversation with one of my friends. He used to work at Heartbeat. His name is Solon. He's someone who's like very interested in process efficiency
Mm-hmm.
and being smart about approach.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also been like really intrigued about AI as well, but that's like kind of tangential to the conversation. But so to your point about first off what I look for and then how to kind of like bypass, and I'm putting this in air quotes
Mm-hmm.
again, the ATS to get top of the pile or top of mind for recruiters as a candidate. What I look for usually, and to be honest, this has changed a little bit over time as well.
Mm-hmm.
Before this whole like, I'm sorry, am I allowed to
Of
curse?
course, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Before before this whole shit show of a job market, I was looking for tenure, to be honest. I was looking for people who have spent a decent amount of time at each company,
Mm.
2+ years at each company, people who have spent time, because to me that signaled that there was enough time for you to build
Mm-hmm.
relationships, processes, and
Mm-hmm.
trust and
Mm-hmm.
credibility within the company. And then I knew that if that was the case, then I could have a very fruitful conversation about how they were able to develop the strategies that they've developed,
Mm.
how they were able to build relationships, right? But now that has completely turned on its
Right.
head because, of layoffs and
Mm-hmm.
everything. So I look for that a little less now. Nowadays, I look for companies that might match the industry that I'm hiring
Mm-hmm.
for. So, for example, I dare say every company has maybe a subset list of maybe competitor companies or aspirational companies that hiring managers tend to keep a lookout for, or tend to be
Mm.
like, oh, interesting, like when they see it on the resume. So that is kind of a shorthand for me to kind of quickly do a quick
Mm-hmm.
screen over all the
Mm-hmm.
resumes. And so if someone, I'm just using maybe Heartbeat as an example, if someone has worked at A24 or,
Mm.
Netflix hit or miss because, I just know they got lots of money and so that could be a difficult conversation too. But let's just say A24, Lionsgate, Netflix, right? Like similar entertainment companies, but maybe even like smaller boutique shops like A24. Those are going to be interesting to me to look at because then it's like, okay, similar size company, doing interesting films. I'd be curious what their process looks
Mm.
like, what their project slate looks like. So, companies that are within the same industry or competitors would be interesting to look at for me, first
Mm.
of all. And then, this sounds very, very no shit Sherlock, but like looking at, the formatting of a resume, looking at, whether there's typos, how they represent what they
Mm.
do. I am truly a proponent of using strong ownership level type
Mm-hmm.
verbiage with resumes, and then also, how they are able to convey their ability to collaborate as well through
Mm.
the resume. So those are some main things that I look for. And then the other part of it is bypassing the ATS. The conversation I had with my friend Solon was there was this Instagram reel that was being circulated about like if you here's a hack if you want to become top of mind to recruiters is apply late at night because then recruiters will see your resume or sorry your application first thing in the morning. And that's interesting, right? Because a lot of applicant tracking systems or ATSs, they do most recent first, right?
Mm.
In terms of a list of applications, it's the most recent applications that come first. So, whereas maybe like 10 years ago, I was always hearing when a role is open, you apply
Mm.
first. Like, I don't know if that's necessarily important anymore, especially in the current job market. But there was this Instagram reel that was saying that, and me and Solon had a conversation about it. He asked me how it worked on the applicant tracking system that I use. I use Ashby, love Ashby, by the way, for my fellow talent acquisition professionals. But Ashby also puts the most recent application
Mm.
first. So and that has been my experience across using many other ATSs also. So if you want to try that, it can't hurt, right? Applying later on at night so that you're like the first application that gets seen or it's kind of like sifted at the
Yeah,
top of the list. But I will say any recruiting team or talent acquisition professional who is worth their salt will do their due
of
diligence
course.
and comb
Comb through
through
all of them.
the
Yeah.
pile.
Yeah, okay. So
Yeah.
you're saying we should all apply at like 8:59 a.m. as you're clocking
Yeah,
in? Oh man.
right then and there.
That is actually really fast. I didn't even think about that. I thought what I thought you were gonna
Yeah.
say was show them that you're applying at night because you're like you're working so hard and you're
Oh, like that could be, I mean, that could be an unintended, byproduct of the impact, but yeah, it's very fascinating. And then, like not to get into all the AI talk,
Yeah.
but like there's also AI filters that exist now on ATSs.
Yeah.
I have thoughts about that. I think it's still a work in
Right.
progress. So I like to still, again, do my due diligence and comb through myself. But
You are just
yeah,
like
companies do
one. Yeah, I
use
was like,
those.
that was gonna be my next question. Is like, I know that you, Vina, will always do your
Hmm.
due diligence and comb through like
Always.
hundreds of applications. But I imagine like that in
Hmm.
of itself gets exhausting. And I know if your fellow talent acquisition
Yeah.
community, can agree with that. But I
Yeah.
am curious to hear the AI in the ATS system. So, for example, a lot of graphic
Hmm.
design jobs right now require at least a minimum bachelor's degree. And that can be quite difficult
Mm.
at times because the program that I teach at, we only offer certificates as they're
Mm.
at the end. I'm working on hopefully an associate's
Hmm.
degree, but at the very least, what
Yeah.
happens is that I even feel discouraged as an educator because if
Mm.
my students are applying and they hit like a certificate or if some of them do have the associate's degree, I wonder if some ATS systems are just going to completely like take them off the list if they're not even if they didn't hit that check mark,
Mm.
right? And we would be
Yeah.
so lucky if everyone was like you and would look at everyone's, but I
Mm.
imagine with just like the bandwidth and how overwhelming it could be helpful to have these AI filters. But I do wonder what happens to those who
Yeah.
in our industry, it's like it's not about the education that where you get your education from, it's about a strong portfolio. But what scares me is that
Yeah.
like like folks who depend on the AI system or filters, like they might not even get to see these portfolios because they just immediately will get removed from the list. And so I'm curious, like you said that you have thoughts on AI, like girl, tell me.
Yes. So there are two different ways that candidate applications can get filtered out.
Mm,
One of them is a way more extreme way, which is the way that I think you're talking about, which is a no pass
right.
through sort of
Mm-hmm.
filter, where you have automatic
Yeah.
rejection
Yeah, yeah.
triggers. And that comes through in the application form itself,
Mm.
where, and I'm pretty sure if many applicant tracking systems are as advanced as Ashby is now, which I'm willing to bet most of them are competing to be as competitive, it is that you can even on the back end set up these automatic reject filters by using AI to scan through the resume as well as what their applicant questions are or the application questions are to say if this person doesn't have X degree, to your point, or if on the application form they say their most recent degree is below this, then you can send a scheduled rejection in 3 weekdays time, business days time,
Mm.
right? So it may not even be right away. They could even be so advanced as to schedule out a rejection note. So that is a more extreme form of like AI usage and like filtering through candidates.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a more gentle filtering through that I have tended to use a little bit, at least to whittle through and get through the first line of
Sure.
defense, and then I'll of course double back and look at anyone I may have missed because I don't trust AI quite
Yeah, of
yet.
course.
But it is a filtering system that goes through and looks at the job description at hand, and it suggests ways that you can help to filter the job description a little further. So
Mm.
let's say there is a social media manager role that you have posted. The AI will look over the job description and it'll suggest, hey, it looks like entertainment companies are really important to you. Here's a filter that I would suggest.
Ah, okay.
And then, yeah. And then another thing that I've noticed on your job description is that you need someone who has community management experience. Okay, so that's another filter. Third filter, someone who has experience managing editorial calendars. Okay, that's another one, right? So, like these three example filters, you can turn on and off.
Mm.
So if you have, and this is true, a requisition or an open role that has 2,000 candidates, and these days those are the numbers
Oh,
I'm working
wow.
with, 2,000 candidates, then you can turn on, like toggle the on and off switch on these filters just to see, okay, how does the population kind of filter down if I turn on this filter? If I turn this filter off and turn on another filter.
Mm.
So you can kind of see also the trends of the candidate
Oh,
pool,
wow.
right?
Yeah.
And when you turn off all of the filters on Ashby, at least, you can see each candidate's name, and on the right hand side, you can see it's color coded. So let's say there are three filters that we were talking about. If said candidate satisfies two out of the three filters, it'll have like two green little like dashes, but one red dash. So you can quickly
Mm.
see in a color coded fashion which ones are most closely like related or correlated to all of the filters that you
Mm.
want to
Okay.
have. So that's a good kind of overview and a softer way of filtering out candidates that I do appreciate because it does cut down on a little bit of initial screening time. But I always try to carve out time myself to like double back and see if there's anything that the AI
Yeah,
might have
of
missed.
course. So I, I always like to go with like, what should, we're hearing about these filters and like 2,000 applications is so much for one person. So what might
Yeah.
you suggest to an emerging designer? And of course, again, this is your perspective, your lived experience, but for folks who are, applying to so many jobs and getting rejected, whether they're getting ghosted. I know that you personally would never ghost, but like there are folks out there who will just like stop talking to an applicant. What would you share with them some what would you share with them to help, you know, as much as it's possible to decentralize themselves from the emotion of applying for jobs? I know that's a hard one.
Yeah. It is, and especially because, truly, truly, I know this is not going to land until it
Hmm.
does, like advice sometimes is not going to make sense until it does, and that's just the unfortunate truth of
Yeah.
it. But like, it's truly not a reflection of your
Mm.
capabilities as a emerging designer. And I want to say, like, use the word emerging designer to empower
Mm-hmm.
yourself, right? Emerging doesn't mean you're a noob.
Mm-hmm.
Emerging means that you are
Mm-hmm.
blossoming,
Mm-hmm.
right? You are on your way to finding success and a path for yourself. It's not that you are an underdog or you are, someone that is behind
Right.
by any
Right.
means, right? So I want to be, extra clear to emerging designers, who you work with on the daily, that it doesn't mean that they are any less or capable of any less,
Mm-hmm.
right? And truly, truly, this job market is not one that I would wish on
Mm-hmm.
anyone. There's a lot of people out there who are struggling, and are in the same boat as you. I think that, specific to maybe designers or creatives, this may be a no-brainer, but quality always beats out quantity.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's a lot of AI tools out there that also helps you mass apply, but that unfortunately is making the job saturation and, the market probably worse
Mm-hmm.
because, first of all, there's no intentionality behind the application process, and then that affects the candidate pool that talent acquisition teams are dealing with.
Yeah.
Then you don't hear back because there's just so many applications, that are fighting for a talent acquisition team's attention or a recruiter's attention.
Yeah.
And so this is like, a cyclical domino effect, that isn't helping anyone,
Right.
right? So quality over quantity. I'm a huge proponent of the why behind things.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, in the world of designers and creatives, that's no different. So whenever you can, even in your resumes, and or cover letters, which
Yeah.
Chris, that I have a specific thought on cover letters, but even in your resume or even like in your outreach to hiring teams or whatnot, find a way to, put the why in what you
Mm-hmm.
do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in your resume you can kind of like even put in fewer words as possible, right? Like, an example of case
Mm-hmm.
studies that you've
Mm-hmm.
created. And it could even be like a regular case study should include, right, the brief, the constraints that you are working with, right, your thinking behind, approaching this brief or this case study, and then maybe even what you do differently now. And so, to the best of your ability, find that one or two sentence or one or two bullet point gem in that case study and share it on your resume so that at least, if let's say the recruiter doesn't have the time to even click through to your portfolio, which recruiters, you guys should, then at least it's like shared partially on your resume
Mm-hmm.
to let recruiting teams and hiring managers know of your ethos and your why as a designer, as a creative.
Mm-hmm.
And then, really thinking through, it's not just about output, it's about intentionality and your approach. So
Mm-hmm.
the more you can focus on that, the more, success you should be able to receive and find.
Mm-hmm.
But again, all the while keeping in mind that this is a completely unprecedented job
Yeah.
market, and truly, truly, it's not you. I know that is of little comfort,
Right.
probably, but
Yeah.
every single person is feeling the weight of this right now. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I was also sharing with a few of my own students or emerging designers is that as long as you are doing the best that you possibly can, you're putting your best
Yeah.
foot forward, and and you applied, it's not a matter of like
Hmm.
whether you yourself is capable or if you're not good enough. It unfortunately it's just
Yeah.
how it goes. It's like sometimes you might be at the lower part of the list and you might not be able to get to that person, or timing, or like you mentioned, like sometimes the requisition is open that all of a sudden they have to close it, or there's a hiring freeze
Yeah.
all of a sudden, or how, or like I even have found like I remember I was looking for jobs and it got put on hold because the person that was in charge went on
Yeah.
vacation. And
Oh, yeah.
so it's like these are
Yeah.
so many different barriers that could come up that we really don't have control over. And what I'm hearing is that we, emerging professionals, or just in general, like professionals in general, like doing the best that you
Yeah.
possibly can. And I like what you said
Hmm.
about quality over quantity, because I do know that on LinkedIn they have like
Hmm.
the fast apply button. And I think that's what is that what you're
Oh, yeah.
mentioning about, like those are the like mass, like click it and it goes through kind of situation?
Yeah, there's even AI like platforms and websites that like I've been fed Instagram ads or ads in general about,
Mm.
to say like, hey, if you sign up with a profile, set your resume up, we will help you distribute it and mass apply to
Oh
all of these
no,
roles
yeah.
based on what you look for. Yeah, and so those are the ones that I'm more talking about. I think the easy
Mm.
apply can have its detriments as well, because then people are, applying on their mobile phones as
Right.
they're like walking to get
Right.
lunch, and they're not really thinking through like certain questions that may be on the
Yeah.
application form. I've been guilty of it before myself. It is very convenient, and I can see you know, the benefit of it,
Mhm.
but I will say, if you can, try to sit down in front of a laptop or your desktop to apply, and don't fall for these sort of AI mass apply and even easy apply options.
Yeah, because I remember when I was also in school, it was like they always say that applying for a job is a job in of itself, because we should
Yeah.
be tailoring our resumes and cover letter to the actual job description. Now, what I have experienced and what I've heard from our own community is that that takes so long, right? If like a job
It does.
description says X, you should be able to do XYZ, you want to make sure that your resume
Hmm.
says XYZ, right? Because I mean, in so many ways that can kind of quote unquote, air quotes, bypass the ATS. But
Hmm.
even more so, like it helps you kind of get a leg up instead of just sharing
Hmm.
the same resume over and over and over again. Do you have any thoughts on that? Is that one of those moments where like, no, I want to demystify that, or
Mm. Yeah, I wish I wish I could. I do see value
Mhm.
in taking the time to make sure your resume matches somewhat with the job
Mhm.
description. Here's what I will say though, assuming you're not applying for completely 180
Mhm.
roles, right? So you're not applying for a project manager role and a sales role, right?
Mm.
Like those are two very different job descriptions. Assuming that you are just mass applying for, let's keep it to project manager
Mhm.
roles, the terminology is mostly going to stay the
Mm.
same. There's usually certain terminologies, like what methodology you use, what systems and platforms you use to project manage. Those can by and large stay the same. So once you kind of find a couple of job descriptions that you want to apply for, and they're all assuming, like project manager roles, look at the commonalities between them. That
Mm.
way you can create one resume for the three
Mm.
roles,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And so the main thing is, even if you do think about intentionally applying to these roles and making sure your resume is
Mhm.
aligned, maybe you only really have to create two completely new versions,
Mm.
as opposed to like really trying to copy and paste a single bullet point on a job description on your resume, because that's a little bit too much work. And also, how accurate is that at
Right,
that point,
right.
right? Like, how true are you being versus just trying to be something to
Yeah,
someone?
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah,
I like
those are
that.
my
I
two
like that.
cents
Like, if
regarding
you
that.
look at across, because a lot of, I mean, using graphic design an example, like we do have the same terminology, so there might be some nuances, but being able to look at your job, the job descriptions, and seeing what the commonalities are,
Mm,
and then inserting that into your resume, definitely, it does the work of making sure that you are standing out, but it doesn't shoulder so much of that time consuming and making
yes.
every resume super tailored to each job, because I know, like, I used to do that and it would take
Mhm.
forever, and sometimes you wouldn't
So
even get a
long.
reply, so it kind of like the ROI
Yeah.
on that in of itself starts to feel very discouraging.
Mhm.
So I do like that. So you kind of
Yes.
found like the medium lift of like still keeping very unique, but still, protecting yourself and your time.
Yeah.
So I can't believe we're already like at the 15-minute mark. I feel like it's like
I
we can still keep talking
know.
forever.
Crazy.
Um,
So
I
long.
know, like, we can talk, like, and I know that like this is such a like it's such a topic that like I wanted to talk about, because again, like, I it's just been left and right. People are just losing their jobs, and or like um just
Yeah.
seeing. I just heard from one of my students, like, oh yeah, someone ghosted me. Like, they were supposed to do a phone a screening initial screening call, and then they were ready, but then the person, I guess, didn't show up, and
Show
yeah,
up.
and then they
Oh,
rescheduled, and then the person didn't show up again. And I'm like,
oh
well, of
my
course, like, and
God.
I'm like, I'm listening to them, and I'm like, oh my God, of course, like, this is, how do you not feel discouraged in those moments? And it really
Yeah.
is like, as much as, like you said, like, as much as I want to give advice of like decentralizing your emotions over these, this is also very, very emotional, because it's like you are looking for a
Yeah.
job and you're putting all this effort
Yeah.
into it. But I'm
Yeah.
so appreciative of hearing from your side, because I was like, I know it's crazy on that side. I used to sit next to talent acquisition people. Like, I see,
Yeah.
I
You've seen it
I've seen your
firsthand.
screen, and or like Lauren's screen, and it's just like this long list of people, and you guys are constantly on phone
Yeah.
calls, and so it's like I really truly hold
Yeah.
space for both, and it is a very difficult space to be in. So thank you for
Hmm.
your insights. I do have like a spicy question. It's like I wanted to call it pop quiz because
Oh.
this is like called office hours, but I guess a spicy question is, what is one hiring myth that you just want to debunk and retire forever? Like, every time you hear this, you're like, oh, that is not the
Ooh.
case at all.
So this has been kind of top of mind for me, and I guess I'll try to explain it a little bit like a
Uh huh.
myth, but more like a thorn on
Uh
my
huh.
side,
Sure.
if
Sure.
that
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
I think some people have the misconception that recruiters are magicians
Mm.
and are able to, glance at a resume and be like, I know exactly what you should be doing for the rest of your
Mhm.
life, and here is your career on a silver
Mhm.
platter,
Mhm.
right? I'm being facetious on purpose because that's how ridiculous it sounds.
Mm.
Um, I really, really don't like it when, and I'll just be like very
Yeah.
honest, I don't like it when candidates come to me, emailing me to say, hey, is there a role that you think I would be a good fit for? Because
Mm.
you're not doing the work
Yeah.
yourself. You're not doing the research. You're not even reading any job descriptions that we have posted
Uh-huh.
up. You're not even looking at our job, like our career site. If you had, you would
Yeah.
know that we're on a hiring
Yeah.
freeze, right? So, like, so help me out
Oh,
here,
wow.
right?
Yeah.
Like, do some legwork and show me that you are capable of doing some work
Oh
on
my
your own.
gosh. I didn't know people would do that. Oh,
Yes,
wow.
and actually, I think my friend Matt, he's starting this like TikTok content presence where he um, well, to be honest, given recent events, I'm not sure if he's considering TikTok
Yeah.
anymore, but certainly Instagram.
Mhm.
He also posts there as well of like recruiting tips. And the other day I saw one of his reels mentioning that he also dislikes it when people come to him to say like, "Hey, what role do you think I'd be a good fit for?" Wouldn't you know?
I that,
Like, shouldn't
that
you
is
know
like a
that?
crazy like what do you mean? It's like, "Oh yes, let me just take all the time that I don't have time. Let me just
Yeah.
take a moment from my busy
No.
day and like look at your resume and be like, I think you'd be a
Yes.
good." That's crazy. That's
Yes. Crazy
that is
pants.
insane. Like I
Yes.
would for me, I'd be so embarrassed if I ever like, hey, I know that you guys are
Yeah.
hiring. I'm wondering if you think that I would be a good fit
Yeah.
for whichever job you think. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Wow.
It's like, hey, XYZ company, I didn't look at your, career site at all, and I don't care to do any of this work, so can you do it
Oh
for me?
man.
Like, that's essentially what you're asking us. No. Candidates, do your due diligence, do your research, like look up the companies that you want to work for,
Yeah.
or go browsing on LinkedIn and look at the roles that inspire
Mm-hmm.
you, and then reach out and say like, hey, I was interested in this role and just wanted to, let you know that I've also applied to it, but, wanted to kind of put a little bit of context behind my application or
Yeah.
what have you,
Yeah.
right? Like, do some legwork, for goodness sakes, please. We're busy
Imagine
enough.
like going to a restaurant and being like, whatever you think I
Yeah,
would like. It's like, what?
yeah. Try to read my mind. Like, I would like
Oh
you
my
to order
gosh.
for me.
That I did not know that was happening on your end. That's
It
insanity.
is
Although I guess like
insane.
I mean, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean things happen. So I'm gonna have to have
Yeah,
you
and
back on
and
like a
I
second episode because I feel like we could talk about
yeah.
this
Oh,
forever. About
a
this.
hundred
So
percent.
obviously I don't want to leave
Anytime.
on like a doom and gloom note. So I do wonder I know I already knew from the beginning like this conversation is gonna be like about the job market. So
Might be.
it's gonna be a little tough.
Yeah.
But I would really love to hear any sort of wisdom you have for anyone in this job market right now, to the emerging designers or even like our seniors or anyone, just everyone who's navigating this. Like any words of wisdom that we would love to leave like on a high note.
Mm,
There's supposed to be a silver lining somewhere.
yeah. Silver lining somewhere. Let's see. I think that, community
Hmm.
is really what we lean on in times of
Yes.
need. And so, this community that you're building, Chris, is incredible. I think that we've seen it in, even in daily life with social
Yeah.
justice and whatnot, like leaning on one another, making sure that we hear and see each other and validate each other.
Hmm.
So, things always feel worse when you feel like you're in an echo
Yeah.
chamber and when you feel
Hmm.
alone, right? So, even if you may not be finding success in hearing back from companies or maybe even hearing a lot of rejections back to back, there are so many Slack communities out there, networking communities out there that are a respite and a sort of like safe
Hmm.
haven for people who are in the same boat and in the same situation as you. Try to research them, go on LinkedIn. And I know LinkedIn can get a little dicey because it's turning a little bit more into like Facebook
Hmm.
nowadays. People are sharing a lot about their, current
Yeah.
circumstances and it can feel pretty dire. But there are some gems in there of like opportunities that people
Hmm.
forward, commenting for reach. In there must be some community that you can join and be a part of to feel like, okay, like let's lean on each other, let's provide each other
Hmm.
help. And I actually, I'm forgetting the name of this now, but Chris, I'll send this to you after our call, so maybe you can distribute it as maybe one
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
links. It was recommended to me as a community by another one of the best people I know. His name is Adam Yamaguchi. He was the learning and development director at Nativo. He relied on this group to help him find a new job.
Oh, okay.
And so these are like small groups that you break off into, almost like little
Hmm.
focus groups. that hold each other accountable to apply to jobs, to like
Mm,
refine your
mm-hmm.
search together. So it's really like, again, the case of community, really helping one another out. I'll try to find the link
Yeah,
again, and
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
send
for
it to you
sure.
so that you can provide it to others.
Yeah, yeah, community. I was just talking to our one of our guests is that, I the term network can be so very like corporate, but it really is like
Yes.
joining the community, being with the people in your field, in your community, and like holding on to one
Yeah.
another. And sometimes that may organically just turn into a possible opportunity, right? Like when you
Yeah.
submerge yourself within the peoples. And I know that it's difficult because we're in such a very digital forward work world. And I know even for
Mhm.
myself, I get
Mhm.
really anxious to go outside and like make, like and
Yes,
and
me
and
too.
be outside. But I love that as like an ending note where like it is like
Mhm.
just lean on each other and like take care of one another and
Yeah.
and just be there for each other.
Yeah, 100%. That's the most important thing above all.
Yay.
Hmm.
Well, Vina, thank you so much for joining us today. I feel like we just have to have like an ongoing, every season I'm just going to bring you back here. We're going to talk about talent
Yeah.
acquisition because I know the job
Yay,
market is just
I
going to
would
be
love
like
to.
up and down, up and down, up and down. And so, and I'm going to look
Yeah.
into these like Instagram reels with the talent acquisition because again, like there's so much that we simply just don't know what's happening on your side, that I think is so nice to be
Yeah.
able to bring that a little bit forward to make it a little bit more human. Because I know oftentimes when people
Mhm.
are navigating um, these the ATSs and just job descriptions, it feels very cold and almost robotic. And so it's kind of nice to give
Yeah.
a little bit of that peek behind the curtain and seeing the humans
Mhm.
behind these systems that often feel really, really cold. So thank you so much for joining
Yeah.
us.
Of course. Thank you for the
Of
invite. I'm
course,
so
of course.
grateful. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.